This practice is inspired by the Shiva Nataraj, the great dance of the Nataraj. In this dance, you see this exuberance, and it reminds us that in our daily life, we need to be dancing. And that dancing in this practice is expressed in pulsations, in these movements, kind of like small bouncing movements to allow us to go deeper into the area of the hips. Let's begin. We want to get stronger legs. We'll also work on longer legs as well. But first, we want to work on the strength. And to do that, you'll need two blocks. Let's start in either downward facing dog or a puppy dog pose or even child's pose, just so that you can kind of take your gaze inward. So, whatever pose you decided to start your practice in, and just stay attuned to your breath. See how you can create this feeling of an inner dance just through the breath. There's a lot of movement, a sense of play through that movement. And now in your pose, you can start a little movement. If you're in downward dog, you can lean to one side, lean to the other. If you're in child's pose, you can walk your hands to one side or the other. Just start to have the outer body now reflect this playfulness, this dance. So it's as if your whole being, the inner body, the outer body, are an expression of this playfulness, this dance. Take 3 more breaths in whatever pose you chose. One more. Make your way to the front of the mat and place your hands to your low back and rise up. You start standing tall. And on the in breath, reach your arms up and slightly back. Exhale, bend your knees and just draw down slightly. And just kind of as if, again, you're kind of pulsing as you're in this chair pose. Just it's kind of a bouncing effect. You're just slowly, just a pulse with the breath, with the fullness. You're just kind of bobbing up and down slightly. And root down to lift yourself up and slightly back. Exhale, come to the earth. Bend your knees to place your hands by your feet and step your right leg back. And keep your hands close to the mat, but not on the mat. And just begin that same sort of pulsing action. And as you do, stay balanced. Just kind of lift yourself up. Keep the back leg very active. You'll start to feel maybe the front hip area open up. Get a little bit more heat there. Now inhale, take your arms up, stay balanced. Keep your hands nice and wide apart and drop in a little bit deeper into the pose. Release your hands down to the mat. Step your back foot forward. Place both hands to the low back and rise up. Inhale, take your arms up. Reach them up and back with the hands wide apart. Exhale with your knees bent. Place your hands to the mat and step your left leg back. Keep your hands close to the mat. You can keep them even on the mat if this really takes you out of balance. But as you just kind of pulse again, you're just kind of lifting the back leg. This really helps this fascia. It just, again, creates this nice hydration. You're just kind of doing this small little bounce in the pose before taking your arms up. Taking your hands wide apart, spread your fingers, take your gaze up, keep your back heel lifted, and slowly take your hands down. Step your back foot forward. Place both hands to the low back and lift yourself up. Reach your arms up again. Reach your hands way back. Open the upper chest. Exhale as if dancing, so lively in your movement. Step your feet back to come to a plank position. In your plank position, just kind of pulse again, just kind of lifting yourself, moving yourself in the action. Now move yourself forward slightly before coming down to the mat. Once you're on the mat, take your hands back so your palms are pressing on the floor. With your palms pressing down, bend your elbows slightly, as if you're pulling your hands in toward your heart. So the arms are really engaged here. Use that engagement to lift your upper chest and rise up. Exhale, soften. 2 more times. Press your hands down to inhale and rise up. Exhale and soften. 1 more time. Press the hands down to rise up. Exhale to soften. Now let's combine the action of lifting the heart, pressing your hands, and playfully let's lift the feet. So inhale, lift your heart up, reach your heart forward, lift your head up, lift your feet up, have the hands very active, pulling in toward the heart. Exhale, come down. We'll do that 3 more cycles here. Inhale, hands engaged. Lift your heart up. Lift your feet up. Exhale, soften. Inhale, reach your heart up. Exhale, soften. Inhale, lift up. And exhale, soften. Place your hands right alongside your ribs. Draw your heart forward. Hug your elbows in and lift yourself up. Come to tuck your toes under and reach your pelvis back toward your heels. Let's get this nice engagement now of the feet. And with more weight coming toward their feet, sometimes they fall off toward the outer edges of the mat, but hug them in toward the midline of the mat as you walk your hands closer to your knees. Now, if your knees get a little cranky about this, then don't walk your hands in so far. But if you can, walk your hands a little bit closer to your knees and come to this position where you're putting a little bit more weight on your heels as the heels hug in toward the midline. You get this nice openness to the chest. Interlace your fingers and reach your interlaced fingers up. Reach your interlaced fingers over to one side and back to center, and reach them to the opposite side and back to center. Release your hands down. Come to all fours position where you can make your way to the front of the mat, either through downward facing dog or whichever way works for you. To come to the front of the mat and stand in Tadasana. So as you stand in Tadasana, stand tall. Have your fingers very engaged, very lively. They're ready to dance. Inhale, reach your arms up and slightly back. Exhale, come down to a forward fold. Take your right leg back again. As you do that same action, where we're just kind of pulsing as you lift your fingers lightly off the mat, and you pulse just slightly to open the pelvis nicely. Inhale, take your arms up, take your hands wide apart. Now exhale, let's come to a twist. Take your right hand down and twist. And as you come to the twist, Open your heart really nicely. Maybe with the hand down or with the fingertips slightly lifted off the floor, you can still do that slight pulsing action. Release your hand down to the mat. Step the back foot forward. Place your hands to the low back and rise up. Inhale, take your arms up. Open the chest. Exhale. Lower yourself down to step the left leg back. And as you again just kind of find that movement, you can take your hands off the mat or leave them on as you do these pulsing actions, these slight bobbing actions before taking your arms up. And with this nice fullness to your chest, you just create this inner attitude of play, this outer exuberance. And exhale, come to the twist. And as you do, either take your hand to the mat or near the mat. And again, a little movement here, little dance in the twist. Just pulse nicely. And as you're ready, release your hand down, step your back foot forward, place your hands to the low back and rise up. Reach up again with your hands way back. Open the chest nicely. Exhale, release your hands down. Step back to a plank position again. In your plank position, draw your heart forward and slowly lower yourself down, just as we did before. Reach your hands back, press your palms down with your elbows bent. Draw in from your fingertips all the way to the heads of the arm bones. Inhale, lift your head. Exhale, soften. Inhale, as the head lifts, the heart reaches forward. Exhale, soften. And again, inhale and exhale. Now let's combine the actions with the actions of the legs. So inhale, lift your head, lift your feet, rise up, have the arms active. Exhale down. Two more. Inhale, lift yourself up. Exhale, soften. One more. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, soften. Come back to child's pose or downward facing dog. And let's all pose or pause. Pause in the pose. And as you take a nice in breath and out breath, have ease in the breath. Invite more fullness to your breath. Take your gaze slightly forward. Walk, step, or hop your way to the front of the mat and lift yourself up in Tadasana. Keep a nice engagement expressed in the outer body. Keep this playfulness of the breath, this movement of the breath. As you step wide on your mat, place your hands right at your hips and draw your elbows in, draw your right toes out, and look at the lineup of the front foot, the back foot. Bend your knee. And same thing with the hands right at the hips. Just do that kind of pulsing actions, right? Even though these poses are so static, and in fact, many practices, the practice is about how long can you hold the pose, right? And certainly there's a lot of value to that, a lot of value to gaining strength and holding the pose for quite some time. But today, what we're doing is just seeing how we can affect the major joints, especially the hip in this case, and the knees and the ankles, in just kind of pulsing, just bringing a little bit more energy to those areas. Inhale, lift your arms up. And we won't be pulsing the arms today, but we'll just keep the legs very active. Now take the right forearm down to the top of the thigh, and same thing, just keep the small movement, small engagement, small pulsation that you're doing. And once you feel like you've really lubricated the joints nicely, as the back leg stays solid, inhale, take your left arm over your head. Now, first, just look at the floor with your gaze and keep your gaze of your eyes on the floor, but start to turn your head. As you keep the gaze of your eyes on the floor and start to turn your head, just notice as you lift your eyes up now toward the sky, you can turn your head quite a bit more. Now come to a very static pose. Keep the back leg strong. All that pulsing that you did to come into the pose, you might be able to keep the front thigh just a little bit more parallel to the earth. And from the strength of the back leg, root down to rise up. Let's come to the opposite side. So as you line up your feet, look at your feet. And with the strength of the back leg, slowly draw yourself into the pose. All right, Veerabhadrasana 2 to begin with, where you're just kind of moving to engage nicely, where you can take your forearm down to the top of the thigh as we come toward Utthita Parsvakonasana. Keep that nice steady pulsation here, this movement going on. Keep the breath doing its inner dance. So you open up nicely with the back leg really strong. Reach your arm up and over your head and take your gaze down to the floor. Keep the gaze of your eyes on the floor as you start to turn your head. Now lift the gaze of the eyes up toward the sky. Turn the head more fully and come to a more static pose. Rather than all the movement, the pulsation, just stay in the pose here. Keep your back leg strong and inhale. Lift yourself out of the pose. Exhale, release your hands and step your way to Tadasana. Let's come to a wide stance again. So we worked on leg strength through the pulsation, hydration of the joints in the pulsation. Now let's work on leg length. So as you come to a wide stance with the legs straight, turn your right toes out, lift your arms up. And in that same way, we've been kind of pulsing in the action. So you can kind of pulse in the action as you come toward triangle pose. So have the right hand free and just kind of pulse in the action. So you may feel a slight pulling sensation on the inner right thigh. Try not to go too deep in this. Keep your back leg really strong. And just draw your right hand down as you kind of do this kind of bobbing action. Just pause here. Take your right hand wherever it easefully supports your upper body as you reach your lifted arm up and over your head. And keep that nice engagement of the back leg. as you get this nice feeling of length through the side body. Keep the back leg rooted strongly down before lifting yourself up out of the pose. Come to the opposite side. Look at the line up of your front heel to your back arch. Keep the legs pulling in as you just draw down slightly. And in the same way, with the back leg parked very fully, just kind of do this slight bobbing action. Keep a nice alertness, fullness in the back leg, nice engagement in the front. And again, you might feel just the slight pulling sensation. So try to be very mindful of your actions before parking your hand right at your shin, getting a nice openness in the underside ribs before reaching your arm up and over your head. And so here you come to a very static form of the actions that we've been doing. A static form in the pose, but the legs are very active. Root down through the very active back leg and inhale, lift yourself up out of the pose. Exhale, release your hands down, come to a seated position. And some of us like to sit on a little elevation just because our hamstrings are a lot happier that way. So if that's the case for you, find a blanket or something to sit on. Have your feet forward. And as you have your feet forward, just get the slight bend to the knees. With the knees bent, just draw the heels in and out, just pulsing like we've been doing. Now, with the heels drilling into the floor, you can get a strong action of the hamstrings as they pull in. And as they do, this action just kind of lift, drawing the heels in and out, just kind of moving. If you're on a carpeting, that's obviously a potential carpet burn for you there. So just get this small pulsation. And extend your legs out after doing that. Take your strap and take the strap around the right foot. And as you take the strap around the right foot, hold on with the left hand and twist. Turn toward the right leg. Get tall first and keep the back leg very firmly planted as you draw forward. So all the work that we did to just kind of pulse into going a little bit deeper into some of these poses just allows for the hips to open nicely. And see if you can tell in this pose as you just softly draw yourself toward the extended right leg. Allow the breath to create fullness in the inner body and length to the outer body, length to the left side ribs, fullness to the right side ribs so you're not collapsing on that side. And inhale, lift yourself up to come out of the pose, bend your knees again. And same thing, you're just kind of moving the heart forward as the heels pull in toward the pelvis. Just getting a nice engagement, nice strength to the legs. So many things are going on. Not only are we moving the heels forward and back, we're pulling the legs isometrically in toward each other. So you feel this nice strong engagement of the inner thighs. You feel the hamstrings contracting, working a little bit more. And now we go from the hamstring contraction to the hamstring extension, right? You're rather than drawing in, you're lengthening the muscle now as you twist to Take the legs straight. You can start with a strap, and some of us may not need a strap, but I just like the strap because it allows you to get so much more length in the side body. You know, perhaps many of us can hold on to the foot, but again, you feel the collapse of the ribs when you do that. So as you root down through the back leg, as you turn your heart toward the extended left leg, just soften down. Just kind of notice for yourself all the actions that we did to open the hips. Maybe you can go working with the breath. Maybe you can go just a little deeper here as you stay attuned to the breath. You can slowly lift yourself up and out of this pose. Now let's engage the hamstrings as we're lying down on your back. So as you move yourself to lie down, have your knees bent. Now, in the same way that we did in that twist, I ask you to press your heels down and pull your heels in toward your pelvis. Right now, do the opposite. Press your heels down and push your feet toward the end of the mat. Do you feel how the low back just kind of presses to the mat when you do that? Let's do it again just so that you can feel the extremes. So you're pressing your heels down. First, you're pulling the heels in toward the pelvis. Now take your hands just to the backs of the thighs and feel how your hamstrings are so engaged when you do that. Now press the heels down, take your hands to the front of the thighs and push your feet toward the back edge of the mat and just notice how the front of the thighs engage. One more time so you get these actions. Take the hands to the back of the thighs, pull the heels in, feel the engagement of the hamstrings, feel the nice curve in your lumbar spine. Press the hands to the tops of the thighs now. Push your feet toward the back of the mat and notice the effects. Notice how the front of the thighs engage, but you have this flat back against the mat. Now come to what feels like a natural curve, a neutral curve, where the legs are engaged, but you don't feel like you have a flat low back, you don't have a lordotic curve in the low back. You feel very engaged here. Take your right ankle to the outer left knee. Now pause here and let's do that same action with the foot that's on the floor, the left foot. So first, pull the heel in toward the pelvis. Notice how you get the strong engagement of the hamstring. Now push the foot toward the back edge of the mat. That's what it is, to keep this leg engaged. Now do that again. Pull the heel toward the pelvis and lift your foot up off the mat, trying to keep that engagement that you had. It's really much more difficult when the foot is off the floor. But see if you can keep a nice engagement as you pull the knee in, as you draw the lifted right knee further away from you. See, with the fingers interlaced, you can really feel if the hamstrings are working or not. Let's see what it takes to get a little bit more muscular tone in the hamstrings and the lifted left leg. Just pause in this action. Release your feet down. And in the same way that we were doing, press your feet down, pull the heels in toward the pelvis. So you get lots of curve in the lumbar spine. Now push the feet away. Now pull the heels in toward the pelvis again and lift your pelvis up. Keep on pulling in. You can press your elbows down to help you lift the heart more fully. Keep pulling the heels in to get that fullness. And slowly release down. Take your left ankle to the outer right knee and pause with your right foot on the floor. Pull the heel in so you get that engagement and push it away. So you can just feel the different actions. Now pull the heel in again before lifting the right foot off the mat. Interlace the fingers behind the thigh or take a strap behind the thigh. Open up really nicely. By taking the left knee further away from your left ribs, keeping your left toes active, trying to get this nice engagement of the right leg as you just kind of feel the muscles work in the interlaced hands. Release your feet down to the mat with both feet pressing on the mat. Same thing, just feel the extremes here. First, pull the heels in toward the pelvis. Push the feet away. Pull the heels in again. Press your elbows down. Keep that pulling in action as you lift your pelvis up. Get this nice fullness to the upper chest. Nice length to the tops of the thighs. And slowly take your pelvis down. Release your arms. Stretch your legs out. And invite a full in breath and out breath. Allow your arms and legs to rest, to be filled with ease. Soften your facial muscles. Invite your breath to create this feeling of an inner dance. You breathe in deep and out long. You breathe in deep and out long. And one more. Breathe in deep. And out long. On your next in-breath, take your arms up over your head and keep your legs straight. And just walk your feet over to the right side of the mat. Walk your hands over to the right side of the mat. Allow your breath to just expand through the left side ribs as you come toward this crescent shape. Now do the same. Just walk your feet over to the opposite side, your arms to the opposite side. Invite your breath to stretch through the side body. Walk your feet and your hands back to the center and slowly bend your knees. Draw yourself over to the side and pause on the side. Now use the strength of your arms to lift yourself up to come to a seated pose. In your seated pose, sit tall. Place your hands right in front of your heart. To the dance, to the play of life, we bow. Namaste. Thank you so much for dancing with me.